Podcast.
Welcome to our weird world. I am your host, John Henson, and it's 420, bro. I'm not high. I'm just whatever, man. Like, I'm not. It's still great. Like, here's the thing. I think that marijuana is not bad. It's better than alcohol. Alcohol is literally poison, right? But like marijuana, it's a growing plant. It's just a natural plant. Now, we can have a discussion about all the synthetic stuff that they're doing in the labs that make you like super zooted, but it's the same substance that comes from the plant. Whereas alcohol, you got to like do some science to get that where you got to get it. And even then, like no health benefits at all. Unless you're reading about wine, and then sometimes wine is great for you. Other times it gives you cancer. So who knows, all right? But like across the board, you know, no one's prescribing alcohol anymore for medical things. Like you used to do like rock and rye if you had like a toothache or something. Like that's what my mom had. But not anymore. That's pretty hardcore against it, you know? And like, and maybe NyQuil, I think technically has alcohol in it, but I think that's just to help you sleep, you know? But here's the thing, right? Like there's a reason why there's medical marijuana, because there are health benefits to it. Anyway, this episode's not about weed, all right? But it's 420 and I don't know. Like I've done episodes where I've been drunk, and I've done episodes where I've been somewhere else on this planet. And I can tell you one thing, I felt mostly better after the not alcohol one. All right. If I'm being honest, but all of that is to say happy 420. If you're going to do it, like do it. Today, though, we were talking about some curses. We're going to have another episode on curses later in the year. But this one, 4 stories of people or places that got cursed and like some things happened, you know? And I kind of said it last week. Like I poo-poo on the paranormal every chance I get. All right. Like Halloween, October, we have all of our spooky themed episodes. I can't take any of them seriously for the most part. Like, it's just so very obviously not what they say it is. But curses, for some reason, there's a lot more, circumstantial evidence connected to it where it's just like, okay, maybe there was something to this. And who knows? Maybe that sort of thing was added after the fact. History has a chance to change and all of that. But whatever. But like some of these curses, not all of them, but some of them, maybe. So we got 4 this week. We're looking at Brunswick Springs, the Delhi Purple Sapphire, the curse of the Hayden family, and our first story will be of Moll Dyer.
Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time.
Moll Dyer was a colonist living near Leonardtown, Maryland, which is just kind of a small village on like a cove of the Potomac River, about 60 miles south of Washington, D.C. Or like a lot of historians aren't exactly sure if Dyer was a real person or if her name was something different, like Mary, Margaret, or Maligo, which was a member of the Chaptico tribe named Moldy. One of them, right? Most of Leonardtown's colonial records were conveniently destroyed in a courthouse fire in 1831. So we kind of just have like folklore and stuff that was passed down. In recent years, however, community efforts have honed in on a woman named Mary Dyer, who was born in Devon, England in 1634 and initially worked as an indentured servant in the Virgin Islands before settling in Maryland. However, there's still some questions about Dyer's overall story and whether or not, again, like I said, it's just simple folklore. They're just kind of passed down from subsequent generations. But her story kind of is like this. In the late 1600s, Maryland's government thought that Massachusetts was doing things the right way when it came to witches, and they actually began conducting their own witch trials of various women. We don't talk about the Maryland witch trials very much because they weren't really concentrated like they were in Salem. They were a little bit more sporadic. Most of the witch trials, though, in Maryland had resulted in acquittals rather than executions. But by the end of the century, the area was dealing with a flu outbreak, and coupled with a poor crop yield and a harsh winter, tensions were pretty high in this particular puritanical community, who began to believe that the disease and famine and ice storms were all a result of somebody practicing witchcraft. Not the natural course of climate and the consequences of a poor climate or a harsh climate, but because someone was a witch. 1600s. After the village residents gathered at the local church, they all came to an agreement that Moll Dyer, who by now was just this old lady living on the outskirts of town, was the one responsible for all of it. An angry mob quickly formed and set fire to her hut. Not a house, but a hut. This old lady living in a little hut. Dyer barely escaped and ran into the woods, but without much to keep her warm in the cold night air, she quickly realized that she was going to die from exposure. Now, according to the legend, Dyer found a large rock and placed her right hand on it. She then raised her left hand toward the moon and cursed the people of Leonardtown. Now, kind of a big hole in this story. No one seems to explain how they know that this woman did this, right? Sure, the angry mob found Dyer's frozen body a few days later with her hands still on the stone and her arms stretched to the sky, allegedly. But, no one knows that she, laid a curse on this town. Well, since then, various people have blamed poor crops, infertility, and family misfortune on Dyer's curse. The rock upon which she died had been lost for centuries. How do you lose a giant rock out in the woods? I don't know. But Philip H. Love, a writer for the Washington Evening Star, later read about this story and made it his life's mission to locate this rock. And he eventually found the 875-pound limestone boulder in a ravine conveniently near Moll Dyer Road outside of Leonardtown, and he actually got the National Guard to go and drag it over to the Leonardtown courthouse. In 2021, the St. Mary's County Historical Society moved the rock to Tudor Hall, where the society is headquartered, where it was paired with a plaque recounting the legend. A discolored handprint can allegedly still be seen on the rock, and many people have claimed that touching this rock makes them feel nauseous and dizzy and uncomfortable. The area back where the rock was originally found has also reportedly been haunted, with sightings of shadow people, a white dog that causes car accidents, an unnaturally thick fog, and frequent lightning strikes. And I'm calling BS on all of this one, all right? I know I hyped up the episode earlier. It's like, hey, maybe there's something to it. Not this one. This is all marketing and tourism. Because here's the thing, Leonardtown, no reason to go there. And it's a pain to get to. And so, got to have a reason. Got to have a thing to make them feel unique. I'm calling BS on this one. All right. If I ever go to Leonardtown, I am rubbing myself all over that rock. That sounds bad. That's not what I meant. I'm going to rub my hands all over it. And I bet nothing's going to happen. Because here's the thing, all right? And I think the thing that I think the reason why I put a little more stock into curses is because of the Robert the Doll curse. Remember that story? I told it back on episode 15, if you want to go back and listen to it. I Like, the whole idea is that, like, you can't take Robert's picture from his little case in the museum or he'll, like, haunt you. And I was like, that's dumb. And so I took a picture of him without asking his permission. And then, like, later that night in the hotel, like, I had some weird things happen. All right? I'm not going to lie. Like, some crazy things happened. Not crazy, but, like, there was, like, a disembodied child's voice running up and down the hall. There was, like, this loud bang somewhere in the hotel that only I heard because I was the only one that shot awake by it. But, like, so, like, that's why I kind of take curses a little bit more seriously. Not this one, though. All right, this Moll Dyer nonsense is not real. All right, anyway, moving on. Brunswick Springs, which sits just outside of Brunswick, Vermont, roughly 85 miles northeast of Montpelier, is a collection of 6 different springs that each contain a different mineral: arsenic, bromide, calcium, iron, magnesium, and sulfur. Whoa boy, wonder how they figured that out. Those springs then flow to the nearby Connecticut River that then marks the border between Vermont and New Hampshire. The Abenaki tribe originally lived in the area and relied on the natural healing powers of these springs. In 1758, during the French and Indian War, a wounded soldier was taken to the springs and allegedly had his wounds healed by the magic water. After the war, the soldier then returned to the springs and began bottling and selling the water. The Abenaki, who thought it was ridiculous to sell something that occurred naturally, objected and fought with the soldier about his operation. And then after an Abenaki warrior and a baby were killed in the dispute, the baby's mother cursed the springs so that anyone who tried to profit from them would fail. Over time, word spread about the springs, which attracted wealthy Europeans to the area when mineral water became a big fad in the 1800s. In 1860, the Brunswick Spring House Hotel was built on the hill above the springs. The property was eventually owned by a dentist named Dr. Rowell, who expanded the main building in 1894. However, shortly after those renovations, the hotel burned to the ground. Although it was rebuilt, Dr. Rowell died in 1910 and the land was sold to John Hutchins, who renamed the property to Pinecrest Lodge. Guess what? In 1929, the hotel burned again, so Hutchins rebuilt only to have the new building burn down again in 1930, and then it burned down again the following year. At that point, Hutchins gave up. Nothing has been built on the property since. Today, the Abenaki people now own the land and recognize the springs as a sacred site and refuse all requests for tourist development. So, maybe it was just angry Abenaki people going and burning down that hotel. Did we consider that? Or are we going to be like, oh no, man, the native people, they're very connected to the earth. They definitely cursed it. And that's what happened. Anyway, in the early 1800s, moving on, William Hayden borrowed money from Mercy Dale, his mother-in-law, and then moved his family to Albany, Vermont. By 1809, Hayden still had not paid back the loan and was going through some more financial trouble and was bordering on bankruptcy. He again went to his mother-in-law for more money, but this time she refused. This request made Mercy Dale really uncomfortable, and she just decided to move away from her family altogether. A few months later, she became extremely ill and suspected that William Hayden had poisoned her in retaliation. So, as she lay on her deathbed, Mercy cursed the Hayden family by saying, "The Hayden name shall die in the 3rd generation, and the last to bear the name shall die in poverty." And that's crazy, because that's her grandkids. But whatever. Maybe she's just a bad grandma. Following her death, William Hayden's daughters all went on to get married and had children of her own. Hayden himself also had 4 sons, but 3 of them died in infancy. Still, along with that, his financial problems continued, ultimately leading to his divorce and forcing him to flee to Canada to avoid the creditors that were coming after him. William Hayden died in 1854 completely broke. Who could have seen that coming? Meanwhile, his only surviving son, Henry Hayden, had somehow accumulated his own wealth, possibly inherited from Mercy's estate, and built an extravagant mansion in another part of Albany. And this is Vermont, not New York. Which is crazy that there's one so close by, but I guess, multiple. Anyway, not that important. Moving on. Henry and his family were some of the most notable residents in town, often taking rides in their fancy horse-drawn carriage for everyone to see to make sure everyone knew how well they were doing. They even held an annual New Year's party in the third-story ballroom of their mansion as their servants treated guests to whatever they needed. Over time, however, Henry's behaviors grew more and more erratic to the point that his mother cut him out of the family's will before he died from a cerebral hemorrhage in 1910. By that point, and this story jumps all over the place and skips a lot of what would have been really important details, but whatever. What do you expect from a paranormal story? By the time Henry died, the family had basically been financially ruined, and their extravagant mansion had sat empty for the past 20 years. By now, most people had somehow become aware of the curse that Mercy Dale had placed on the family 100 years prior at this point and believed it had come true. Well, shortly after Henry's death, a Canadian family purchased the mansion and the land around it for $25,000. Soon after, rumors began circulating that the estate's underground tunnels, which had previously been used to smuggle Chinese immigrant workers for some reason, were now being used for bootlegging. However, nothing was really ever discovered, and the mansion was sold again in 1922. Over the next several decades, the Hayden Mansion was owned by several people, but no one really ever had enough money to maintain it. Over time, various pieces of the estate were sold off, others burned down. Then, as things do, rumors began circulating around Albany that the house was haunted, because of course it was. People passing by reported strange lights coming from the house and hearing music from the third-story ballroom because ghosts love a party. Some also began claiming that the ghosts of the Chinese immigrants that were being smuggled, allegedly, were haunting the house. Nothing has ever been proven. The final surviving member of the Hayden family, who was in the third generation as Mercy prophesied, was Armenia Hayden, who was chronically ill and lived out the rest of her life alone and impoverished in Waterville, Maine, before dying in 1927. So, assuming that we have some physical evidence of Mercy saying this curse and not just hearsay, but maybe she wrote it down, it did come true. 3 generations later, the Hayden family, at least this branch, because obviously there's other Haydens, this branch of the Hayden family name completely died out, completely impoverished with nothing. So, crazy. Now, our final story. Following the British invasion of India in 1857, British troops performed their usual raping and pillaging of India's palaces. At the Temple of Indra in Kanpur, Colonel W. Ferris of the Bengal Cavalry took what he thought was a purple sapphire from the temple as a treasure to take home with him. However, almost as soon as he arrived back in England, Ferris suffered a series of financial hardships that nearly bankrupted his family. Although he initially blamed all of that on his own poor financial decisions, when every single member of his family got really sick, he then started to think about well, what else could I have done? And then he looked at that big purple sapphire that he had. And he's like, oh man, maybe this is cursed. So Ferris, he tries to figure out what to do. He loans the gem to a friend who then commits suicide a few days later. And at that point, Ferris became totally convinced that this gem was cursed. In 1890, Ferris's son now had possession of the gem. He was struggling financially, so he gave the stone to Edward Heron Allen, a respected writer and scientist at the time. Heron Allen, a super logical, reasonable dude, didn't think much of any curse and happily accepted this gemstone. But when he too began experiencing a series of hardships, he bound the stone to a silver ring fashioned as a 2-headed snake. He also attached 2 amethyst crystals cut into the shape of beetles and inscribed the silver ring with zodiac symbols to make it really obvious that this is a really cursed thing. I don't know. But for the next several years, Heron Allen reported that he was constantly haunted by the apparition of a Hindu yogi that would appear inside of his home, frantically searching for this sapphire. In 1902, Heron Allen then loaned the gem to a friend who almost immediately experienced his own hardships, though no one seems to want to provide any detail as to what those unlucky events actually were. And then after getting the gem back, Heron Allen fell back on hard times and angrily threw the stone into the Regent's Canal in London. A few months later, the canal was dredged, which unearthed the sapphire once again. The stone was taken to a local jeweler who recognized it as a piece he had mounted for Heron Allen a few years back and gave it back to him. Heron Allen, who at this point had to believe the gem was somehow just, eternally attached to him, then lent the stone to a professional singer who suffered a severe accident the first time she wore it and then was never able to sing again. When he got the stone back, Heron Allen packed it into a box with other keepsakes and deposited it into a safe at his bank with clear instructions to keep it sealed for up to 33 years after his death. Heron Allen died in 1944, at which point his daughter defied her father's commands and removed the stone from the bank. She then sent it to the National History Museum, where it stayed in storage until 1972, when Peter Tandy discovered it, along with the following warning letter, which of course I'm going to do in a terrible British accent. To whomever shall be the future possessor of this amethyst, these lines are addressed in the morning before he or she shall assume the responsibility of owning it. This stone is trebly accursed and is stained with blood and the dishonor of everyone who has ever owned it. From the moment I had it, misfortunes attacked me until I had it bound round with a double-headed snake that had been a finger ring of Hayden the astrologer, looped up with zodiacal plaques and neutralized between Hayden's magic tau and 2 amethyst scarabaei of Queen Hatasu's period, brought from Deir el-Bahari. Okay. Whoever shall open it shall first read this warning, and then do so as he pleases with the jewel. My advice to him or her is to cast it into the sea. I am forbidden by the Rosicrucian oath to do this, or I would have done it long ago. What's the Rosicrucians got to do with it? I don't know. Anyway, the Delhi Sapphire, which isn't actually a sapphire, I think it's an amethyst, is still at the Natural History Museum in London and is on public display. The museum believes that Heron Allen made up everything about the curse as part of the book he wrote, titled The Purple Sapphire, under the pen name Christopher Blair. However, a lot of people think the gem is cursed. Maybe it is. Maybe he made it all up. If he wrote a book about it and the book is, fiction, then he probably made it up, you guys. I don't know. In 2004, museum curator John Whitaker was tasked with transporting the stone to a lecture at the Heron Allen Society. But on his first attempt, he was caught in a thunderstorm and crashed the car that he and his wife were riding in. On the second and third attempts, he became extremely ill and could not finish the trip. However, since then, no other issues have been reported with this gemstone. There we go. Curses in the books. These are fun, right? Like, are they real? Are they not? We don't know. Maybe just somebody made some stuff up for fun, and who knows? But let's recap and see what we learned today. What did we learn? Number 1, Moll Dyer. Did she really put a curse on Leonardtown? Was someone out in the woods when she muttered, "I'm in a cursed Leonardtown, I'm cold"? Like, no, we don't know that. And is there a hand on the rock? Maybe. Who knows? If I get out there one day, I'm going to put my hand on the rock and see what happens. Number 2, Brunswick Springs in Vermont, like, you can still go visit the springs, but I don't know, maybe figure out which spring is drinkable and which was, I don't know. I don't think you should be drinking arsenic water. I think it's kind of poisonous and will probably do you a lot of harm. So I don't know, maybe just don't go. Maybe don't go to those springs. Anyway, number 3, the Delhi Purple Sapphire. Not a sapphire, but probably an amethyst. If it's purple, probably an amethyst. Was it cursed, or was it just this writer using it as fodder for one of his books? Who knows? If I ever get to London and go to the Natural History Museum, I'm going to see it for myself and maybe figure out if I can get cursed by it. Who knows? Maybe some yogi put a curse on it back when Britain invaded. Who knows? But, it's fun.
What did we learn?
Next week on Our Weird World, we are going back to one story, and we're doing another cult, and we are looking at the Fountain of the World. Actually, one of the earlier cults. And were they super bad? Maybe, probably, but they also kind of were helpful in ways. But we'll look into that. One of the early cults out in California before cults became cool, essentially. But we'll look at the Fountain of the World next week. So thank you for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast